Before we dive into today's episode, please note the views and opinions shared by our guest are entirely his or her own and do not reflect the positions of any organization with which he or she may be affiliated, past or present. All insights represent his or her personal perspectives only.
Hi, welcome and grüezi to a new episode of Governance Unplugged. Today's episode addresses one of the most important tensions organizations face as artificial intelligence moves rapidly from experimentation into daily business reality. The title of today's episode is therefore, How Internal Audit Brings Reality to AI. Boards Need Truth, Not Tech Optimism. AI is creating enormous expectation across the organizations. It promises efficiency, speed, insights, automation, and entirely new ways of working. And in many areas, those promises are real. But alongside the opportunities come equally important questions around governance, control, accountability, data quality, bias, and the very real risk of leadership teams being carried away from optimism before they understand the risks in their full extent. That is exactly why internal audit has such an important role to play. In a world where AI is often discussed with excitement, pressure, and at times a little too much confidence, internal audit can bring something incredibly valuable to the board and executive teams, which is reality. Not to slow innovation down, but to make sure decisions are grounded, risks are understood, and the organization moves forward with both ambition and clarity. Because boards do not need blind enthusiasm for technology. They need truthful insights into what is really working, what is not yet under control, where the real risks lie, and what responsible implementation actually requires. To help us explore today's topic, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Robert Zergenyi, someone who brings deep expertise, practical insights, and a very clear perspective on how internal audit can help organizations navigate the realities of AI with both clarity and impact. Robert brings tremendous experience from Zurich Insurance Group, where he spent almost 17 years leading operations and technology audit and building one of the most advanced data-driven audit approaches I have ever seen in practice. He led large-scale risk-based audit programs across a highly complex global environment, varying everything from core operations and finance to cloud, cybersecurity, resilience, and major digital transformation. What makes Robert's track record especially powerful is how he, together with his team, transformed the way audits were executed. Under his leadership, Zurich shifted to a model where, and listen carefully, around 90% of audits were driven through system data analysis. Teams would test clear hypotheses across end-to-end processes, then focus deep dive work on the outliers and exceptions that truly mattered. The result of that was sharper assurance, stronger control confidence, and much more actionable insights for the executives and the boards. Today, as the CEO of Fiduciary, Robert helps organizations and audit functions bring exactly this kind of practical AI analytics-enabled transformation to risk and assurance. Robert, welcome to the show. I'm very, very happy to have you here today.
Hello, Thomas, for the introduction.
So, Robert, before we start to dive deep into today's topic, let me ask you two light-hearted warm-up questions. So, when you hear the word AI, what is the most overused phrase you wish would disappear from board decks forever, and what would you replace it with?
Yeah, one we hear often is we have an AI strategy and we are nearly done and have implemented AI. Because 9 out of 10 times it really means somebody bought a tool, run a pilot, and nobody can explain what decision changed, what risk were introduced, or who owns the control framework.
And maybe a little bit more personal question. After a demanding day full of meetings, risks, and thought decisions, how do you reset your mind? What helps you switch off, and where do you go to truly recharge your batteries?
Spend my days around risk, complexity, and decision. So normally I recharge by going to exact the opposite to the nature. I'm a glaciologist by profession, and being outside is my meditation. Trail running and swimming are my quick switches. They flush the mental noise. And when I want a proper reset, I do ski touring or sailing does it. No inbox, No noise, just peace, weather, and present.
Thank you so much, Robert. So let's dive into today's topic. So my first question is, AI has shifted from an IT topic to a board level priority. In your view, Robert, what has fundamentally changed in the board fiduciary responsibility and oversight because of AI? And what does good board level governance look like in practice?
So what has fundamentally changed with AI is the effect that it has on competition and risk, especially for digital companies. AI is not longer just a tool to improve efficiency. It changes how value is created, how decisions are made, and how quickly organizations can adapt. Once AI starts influencing decisions and speed, it moves from the background into the core of the business. Economically, AI is becoming part of almost every critical process in a company. Pricing, risk modeling, customer service, operations. These are no longer purely human activities. AI increasingly supports or shapes them. And this creates a clear divide. Companies that apply AI better than others won't just be slightly ahead. They become structurally more competitive. They learn faster, react faster, and operate on a different scale. Don't keep up, won't fall behind slowly. The gap opens quickly. That's why AI is no longer an IT topic. It's a strategic issue. And once AI becomes strategic, it becomes a board issue. From a fiduciary perspective, this changes the board's role in two ways. First, boards must ensure the right strategic decisions and investments are made. Where does AI genuinely create value? Where does it not? And where is the organization taking a risk without clear benefit? This is a classic board responsibility, now applied to AI. Second, boards are increasingly accountable for how AI is governed. That means how success is defined, which KPIs are used, whether risk, ethics, and compliance are actively managed in practice and not just described in policies. Good board level AI governance is therefore very practical. It comes down to three things. First, accountability. There must be a clear ownership for AI driven decisions, not the system, not the committee, a named human role. When something goes wrong, it must be obvious who is responsible. Second, metrics. Board needs measures that go beyond technical performance. Accuracy alone is not enough. What matters is real world impact, customer outcomes, consistencies, overrides, errors, and unintended consequences. Third, guardrails. Strong boundaries around ethics, transparency, and compliance, not as principle, but as operational limits that define what AI is allowed to do, when it must stop, and when humans must step in. Because in an AI-driven world, failures are rarely stay technical. Misselling, biased decisions, or uncontrolled automation are not just IT failures. They are governance failures, and customer and regulators respond to them accordingly. So the keyboard question is no longer whether AI is being used. The real question is whether AI is being used in a way the organization and the board can confidently stand behind. AI moves fast, but accountability always moves faster, straight to the top.
Robert, I think your point that AI failures quickly become governance failures is very powerful. If you were sitting in a board meeting tomorrow, what is the one concrete sign that would tell you this board is generally governing AI well, rather than just talking about it at high level?
Let me draw a very blunt line. Management governs AI. The board judges whether that governance is credible or fictional. If I look at management, the question is more operational. Do they actually know where AI is in use? What is allowed to decide? Who owns it? How often humans step in to stop or correct it? If management can't show that with real evidence, they are not governing AI. They're supervising a risk they don't fully understand. But for the board, the test is harsher. A board that governs AI well doesn't ask, do we have an AI strategy? It asks, show me where AI was wrong, who intervened, and what changes afterwards. If a board never sees failed AI decisions, override, escalation, or misses, It does not mean that AI works perfectly. It usually means the board is kept at a comfortable distance from reality.
So there has been a lot of movement and debate around AI regulation, including complexity, overlaps with other regimes, and about competitiveness. From a board perspective, what is the most important regulatory reality check to understand right now, and how should boards steer between compliance, innovation, and reputational risks?
One important reality check for boards right now is the regulation situation around AI. AI regulation is still evolving. It's fragmented, timelines are not fully settled, and even regulators are still working through scope, sequences, and enforcement. We can see this really clearly in Europe. The EU AI Act has set a strong direction, but many practical questions are still being clarified. How it interacts with GDPR, how product liability applies, how sector rules overlap, and when exact different obligations kick in. So from a board perspective, one thing is very clear. Waiting for the perfect regulatory certainty is not an option. Boards cannot pause AI adoption until every detail is settled, but they also cannot afford to be blind. The right focus now is control and transparency. At the minimum, boards should expect three very basic things from management. First, a clear, complete view what AI is actually in use across the organization. Not what is planned, not what's in pilot, but what is deployed today. Tool used in the business units, operations, and customer-facing processes. Second, a structured risk assessment of those AI systems. That means understanding their purpose, their potential impact, how much decision-making authority they have. Are they advising humans or are they triggering actions automatically? That distinction matters enormously from a risk and a regulatory perspective. And third, boards really should receive explicit confirmation that no prohibited AI use cases are being deployed. This is particularly relevant under frameworks like the EU AI Act, where certain applications are clearly off limits. This is not about interpretation. It's about knowing what is allowed and what is not allowed. In highly regulated sectors like financial services, boards already have a partial head start. Model, data usage, and automated decisions are regulated today already. But AI regulations goes beyond traditional models. It captures many use cases that sit outside what organization historically thought as of model risk. That means board need to assure that all implementation on AI are assessed against the relevant regulatory requirements, not just the familiar ones, and not just by default through existing processes. This is where the balance between compliance, innovation, and reputation is created. If boards can demonstrate transparency, risk awareness, and active governance, they create space for innovation. They show regulators and stakeholders that AI is being used consistently and responsibly. If they cannot, regulatory pressure and reputational risk will very quickly outweigh any potential AI upside. So the message for board is simple. You don't need perfect regulatory clarity, but you need visibility, discipline, and control now, not later.
So that brings me to the next question, Robert. Many board members still report limited AI knowledge, yet accountability remains with them. What are the few essential questions boards should consistently ask management to build trust and ensure responsible AI, especially around bias, explainability, transparency, and human in the loop who taking the decisions?
When board ask how to stay in control of AI, the answer is not a technical expertise. It's asking the right question consistently and repeatedly. In practice, there are a small number of questions that separate real oversight from comfort level governance. The first question is about visibility. Quite simply, do we actually know what we have? Board should challenge whether management has a complete up-to-date view of all AI system in use. Not just flagship project, but AI embedded in products, processes, and third-party solutions. Without the clear inventory and basic risk classification, governance doesn't really exist. What exists instead are assumptions, and many AI control failures start exactly there. The second question is about boundaries. Are we operating within the lines? Boards don't need to be legal experts, but they do need confidence that prohibited or unacceptable AI use cases are not being deployed, and that all AI systems are assessed against applicable regulatory and ethical requirements. This includes emerging regimes like the EUA Act, but also sector rules and internal standards. The board role is not to interpret the law, but to ensure disciplines exist. The third question is ownership. Who is responsible for what? For every material AI system, there must be an end-to-end ownership, covering data models, outcomes, and decisions. When AI influences or automated decisions, accountability must still sit with a named human role. Blurred ownership is one of the most common and most dangerous gaps in AI governance. The fourth question focuses on prevention. How do we avoid harm in day-to-day operations? Board should ask what control management has in place to ensure AI is used fairly, transparently, and ethical, and where human judgment is required. This is where bias, explainability, and human-in-the-loop controls belong, not in policy documents, but embedded in how the business actually operates. The fifth question is about independent challenge. Who checks the checkers? Board should understand how second-line function like risk, compliance, and legal independently review AI risk, including bias, model drift, explainability, and regulatory alignment. And importantly, boards should expect evidence of challenge, not just reassurance that policies exist. The sixth question is assurance. Has any of this actually been tested? Internal audit plays a critical role here. Boards should expect internal audit to review the AI governance framework and test whether controls over key and high-risk AI systems work in practice. This is where confidence is earned. Governance without assurance is not board-grade governance. If you step back, the summary for board is actually very simple. Boards don't need to understand AI in depth, but they must insist on visibility, clear accountability, independent challenge, and credible assurance. If those elements are in place, boards can support innovation with confidence. If they are not, AI risk will surface sooner or later, and it will surface at the board level.
You said boards do not need deep technical expertise, but they do need visibility, accountability, challenge, and assurance. Where do you most often see boards getting this wrong in practice? Is it that they ask too few questions, the wrong questions, or they accept reassuring answers too quickly?
Now, generally in practice, boards usually don't fail because they ask too few questions. They fail because they ask the wrong questions and accept reassurance answer too quickly. Most boards do ask about AI. The problem is how they ask. Questions like, do we have an AI governance? Are we compliant? Invite exactly the kind of answer that makes everyone feel comfortable and tell the board almost nothing. Where boards get it wrong is stopping at policy level reassurance instead of pushing for decision level evidence. The most common failure pattern I see is this. Management says, we have controls, framework, and experts in place. And the board moves on. No follow-up, no challenge, no request to see where AI actually influenced outcomes, where it failed, or where humans had to step in.
When AI starts influencing or even making decisions, accountability can become very blurred. How should boards and management define decision authority, escalation, and ownership when agentic systems are involved? And what evidence of governance should boards demand to stay protected?
So when organizations deploy agentic or autonomous system, accountability cannot be treated as an afterthought. These systems don't just support decisions. They can initiate actions, chain multiple decisions together, and adopt their behavior without continuous human input. That fundamentally changes how governance has to work. For boards and management, the starting point is clarity. It must be explicitly defined where an agent is allowed to act on its own, within which limits, and where human approval is mandatory. This is not about technical design, it's about decision authority. Every category of autonomous action needs a clear named human owner. If that ownership is unclear, accountability is already broken. The next critical element is escalation. With autonomous agents, escalation cannot rely on judgment calls or good intentions. it must be built directly into the system. That means predefined triggers. For example, when confidence drops, when the system encounters something new, when goals conflict, when ethical or legal risk appear, when financial thresholds are exceeded, or when the agent changes its own behavior. When those triggers fire, escalation must be immediate and route to humans who have real authority to stop, override, or shut the system down. This leads to a very important governance principle. Accountability can never sit with an agent, a platform, or a committee. One accountable executive must own the outcome of autonomous behavior end to end. Committees may advise, system may act, but responsibility remains human. From a board perspective, protection comes from evidence, not reinsurance. Boards should demand concrete proof that autonomous agents are deployed in line with regulatory and internal requirements. That includes clearly documented agent mandates, defined autonomy boundaries, traceable logs of decision and actions, version controls over model and prompts records of overrides, and ongoing monitoring for drift, goal misalignment, or unexpected behavior. Just as important is independent oversight. Boards must ensure that second-line functions like risk compliance and legal independently review agentic system and their guardrails. And third-line internal audit must periodically audit agents in live operation, not just policies, but real autonomous decisions and real failure scenarios. There is no practical guidance available on how to do this properly. For example, the ebook How to Audit Agents by the company Visionaire lays out how agentic system can be audited in practice, not just in theory. The bottom line for boards is simple. With autonomous agents, accountability must become tighter, not looser. If a system can act on its own, then governance, ownership, escalation, and independent assurance must be provable at all times. Anything less is not innovation, it's unmanaged risk.
So, Robert, let us talk about internal audit. If you had to define internal audit's most valuable contribution to AI and digital transformation in one sentence, what would it be? And then, what are the top areas internal audit should assess across the AI lifecycle, including continuous assurance versus periodic reviews, data and model risk, third-party reliance, and the people side, culture and talent?
When we talk about internal audit role in AI and digital transformation, it really comes down to two things: assurance and knowledge incubation, always grounded in the audit charter and mission. Internal audit's value is not just to look backward, but to provide independent, forward-looking assurance that AI is governed, controlled, and accountable, while at the same time helping the organization understand emerging risks before they turn into real failures. Across the AI lifecycle, internal audit needs to look end to end. That starts at strategy and it goes all the way through deployment and day-to-day operation. A key question is whether governance and accountability are clearly defined. Who owns AI-supported decisions? Who owns autonomous decisions? And is decisions authority explicitly designed or just assumed? Audit should assess whether property lifecycle control exists. That includes how AI use cases are approved, how systems are designed and tested, and how they are deployed, and how changes are managed over time, including retraining and updates. AI doesn't stand still, so controls can be static either. This is where the balance between continuous and periodic assurance becomes critical. For dynamic AI system, internal audit needs to rely more on continuous risk-based assurance, using monitoring indicators to stay close how systems actually behave. At the same time, there is still a clear role for periodic deep dive reviews, especially around governance design, accountability, and control effectiveness. There are several areas that consistently deserve focused attention. One is data and model risk. That means looking at data quality, bias, assumptions, explainability, and drift, not just at launch, but also over time. Another is third-party and ecosystem risk. Many AI capability rely on external vendors, platforms, or data sources. Audit should assess who's accountable, what audit right exists, how concentration risk is managed, and whether there are viable exit strategies. A third area is agentic and autonomous systems. Here, audit needs to look at mandates, autonomy boundaries, and escalation triggers, and whether decisions and actions are actually auditable in practice. And finally, there is the people side. Culture, skills, behavioral matters just as much as technology. Internal audit should assess whether people understand AI well enough to challenge it, whether automation bias is being managed, and whether talent models and incentives support responsible use. When internal audit gets this right, it does not slow transformation. It then enables safe scaling. It helps ensure that accountability stays human, controls evolve alongside technology, and assurance remains credible, continuous, and aligned with the organization's missions. That's where internal audit creates real value in an AI-driven organization.
Robert, I really like your idea that internal audit should provide both assurance and knowledge incubation. What would you say to chief audit executives who are still hesitating or hesitant to engage deeply with AI because they feel their team are not yet technically strong enough?
In fact, waiting until teams feel technically ready is the bigger risk. AI is already in production, already shaping decisions, and boards are already asking audit for assurance. If internal audit is not at the table early, it will be pulled in later, usually after something has gone wrong. This is where knowledge incubation matters. Audit can start small, review use cases, decision authorities, data flows, controls, escalation paths. Work alongside the business, learn by auditing. You don't need to have all the answers on day one. You need to build the capability deliberately over time. And importantly, technical depth can be assessed through training, targeted hires, core sourcing, or specialists. Judgment, independent, and organizational understanding cannot. So my message to hesitant chief audit executives is this: don't wait to be perfect. Start where the risk is already are.
Robert, thank you so much. This was really extremely interesting, short but sweet. So I think what I take away from today's conversation is that one, AI is no longer a technically side topic, but it's now a real boardroom priority. Once AI starts shaping decisions, customer outcomes, speed and competitiveness, accountability moves straight to the top. Second, I think is that strong AI governance is not about elegant principles on paper. It's about clarity in practice, clear ownership, full visibility, meaningful metrics, and firm guardrails around risks, especially also ethics and human oversight. And I think finally, internal audit has a critical role here to play, not as a brake on innovation, but as an enabler of safe and responsible transformation by providing assurance, challenging weak governance, and helping organizations scale AI in a way they can truly stand behind. Did I get that right, Robert?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent summary.
If you could give every board member one superpower for AI oversight, what would that be and why?
If I could give every board member one superpower for AI oversight, it would be the ability to see AI decisions exactly as they happen in the real world, including when they fail, when humans intervene, and when things almost go wrong. Why? Because boards don't lose control of AI due to a lack of strategy or intent. They lose control when AI becomes invisible, abstracted into slides, frameworks, and reassuring summaries. The moment AI decisions are visible at the level of outcomes, exceptions, and accountability, oversight becomes much simpler.
Thank you, Robert. So if our listener would like to get in touch with you or learn more about you, where would they have a chance to find you?
So you can find me on my webpage at visionar.com. I also have a set of ebooks there. You can shop on the shop itself, and simply reach out at info@visionaire.com if you have any feedback, if you need any support, and you also can find me on LinkedIn under Robert Zergenyi.
Robert, thank you so much for having been with us today.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for that really exciting interview and podcast you do here. Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in as always, and make sure to subscribe to Governance Unplugged. And if there's any topic you would like us to explore or a guest you would love to hear from, please don't hesitate and drop me a message on LinkedIn, as many of you already have been doing. And as always, together, let's build stronger, more resilient organizations, one conversation at a time. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep driving governance excellence.